When President Ibrahim Traoré stepped off the runway in Beijing, no one, not even his closest advisors, could have predicted what was about to unfold. Cameras flashed. Chinese guards stood at full attention. And within hours, whispers turned to headlines. A $55 million luxury timepiece? A secret arms deal involving 100 next-generation J-35A stealth jets? What happened next left global leaders breathless, African youth inspired, and the world order trembling. This was not just a diplomatic visit. It was a power shift, wrapped in symbolism, cloaked in secrecy, and executed with military precision. It all began on a misty Wednesday morning in Beijing. The tarmac was calm, but the air was thick with anticipation. President Ibrahim Traoré of Burkina Faso was making his first official state visit to China, a move many labeled routine, until the Chinese government rolled out a welcome fit not for a leader of a developing nation, but for a global kingmaker. As Traoré descended the aircraft stairs, an elite Chinese honor guard lined both sides of the red carpet, bowing respectfully. At the bottom, Chinese President Xi Jinping greeted him not with a handshake, but with a brotherly embrace. That moment, captured by drones and broadcast live, was the first of many shocks. Immediately, the press noticed something unusual glinting on Traoré's wrist. At first glance, it looked like a high-end Swiss timepiece. But as zoom lenses focused, murmurs erupted across social media. The watch was later identified as a custom-made $55 million diamond-encrusted tourbillon, gifted by the Chinese government, an artifact more symbolic than material. It was embedded with gold from Burkina Faso and jade from China, symbolizing an unbreakable economic and cultural alliance. But that was just the beginning. In a private military facility near Chengdu, Chinese defense officials and engineers led President Traoré into a massive hangar, where beneath a glowing red banner that read, Africa-China Strategic Air Defense Pact, sat a line of 100 brand-new J-35A stealth fighter jets. These fifth-generation jets, often compared to America's F-35, had never before been offered in such quantity to any foreign leader, let alone to a nation outside China's immediate sphere of influence. The message was clear. China wasn't just investing in Burkina Faso, it was betting on Traoré as the future face of Africa. Xi Jinping, in a toast that evening, declared, President Traoré does not represent only Burkina Faso, he represents a rising Africa. We do not give jets to those who follow. We give them to those who lead. The Western world watched in disbelief. How could a 36-year-old military captain-turned-revolutionary leader pull off what decades of diplomacy and foreign aid had failed to achieve? Traoré hadn't begged. He hadn't compromised. He came with a vision, and he left with jets. Washington, Paris, and Brussels scrambled for statements. NATO called for an emergency intelligence briefing. CNN, BBC, and Al Jazeera ran breaking news banners reading, Burkina Faso secures stealth jets, a new era in African military autonomy. But what stunned many wasn't just the military hardware, it was the symbolism. For centuries, Africa had been the recipient of conditional aid, military scraps, and diplomatic half-measures. Now, a new narrative was being forged, with titanium wings and a platinum watch. Despite the military overtones, Traoré's message throughout his visit was remarkably human. In a joint press conference with President Xi, he said, We did not come here for war. We came here for peace. But peace without strength is submission. Africa has bowed too long. Today we stand. The crowd erupted. And in that moment, millions across Africa watching via live stream felt something ignite deep within, hope mixed with fire. Traoré went further. He announced the construction of a new Pan-African Aerospace Defense Center in Ouagadougou, funded jointly by China and the West African Coalition of States. Engineers, pilots, and scientists from across the continent would be trained there, not to serve foreign powers, but to protect African skies from foreign interference. Perhaps the most stirring moment came at the Beijing Youth Forum, where Traoré gave a surprise speech. Speaking in fluent French and translated to Mandarin, he addressed over 10,000 students. I wear this watch not because of its value, but because it tells the time of change. My people have suffered. Our rivers bled. Our gold was stolen. Our voices silenced. But today, I speak not as a victim, but as a brother. Africa is not asking the world to save her. She is simply asking for the world to get out of her way. Tears filled the eyes of many. Chinese students stood and applauded for over 6 minutes. Western media, sensing the seismic shift, began pushing narratives of neo-colonialism in Chinese disguise. But African commentators pushed back fiercely. Political analyst Dr. Sifa Madaki said on DW News, "When the West arms Ukraine with billions, it's seen as defense. When China arms Burkina Faso, it's seen as manipulation. What you're witnessing is an African pivot, a declaration that we will choose our partners, write our stories, and fly our own jets." As Traoré'S jet lifted off from Beijing at the end of the week, the runway was lit with Chinese and Burkinabe flags fluttering side by side. Behind him, he left a trail of headlines, defense deals, cultural agreements, and millions of minds awakened to a new possibility, an Africa that leads, not follows. But he also carried something more, a whisper of destiny, a spark of revolution, and a legacy that may just redefine the 21st century. The question on everyone's mind: what happens next? Will Africa unite under this new vision? Will Western powers attempt to undermine it? Will Traoré become a symbol of renewal, or a target? One thing is certain: the world will never see Africa, or Ibrahim Traoré, the same way again. The world thought it had seen it all: the diamond-studded $55 million watch, the 100 J-35A stealth jets, the thunderous applause in Beijing. But what the cameras didn't capture was even more explosive. Behind closed doors, inside the hallowed halls of China's most guarded political fortress, Ibrahim Traoré sat face-to-face with Xi Jinping and 5 of China's most powerful generals. The subject? Not just weapons or trade. It was the future of Africa and the end of Western dominance. What unfolded next was a series of secret agreements, soul-shaking revelations, and a bold declaration that would send ripple effects through Washington, Paris, and beyond. It was not on the official itinerary, not mentioned in press briefings. No cameras allowed. Only a small circle of hand-picked advisors, interpreters, and military aides were present. At exactly 11:11 a.m., Ibrahim Traoré was escorted into the Eagle Room, a subterranean chamber deep beneath the Great Hall of the People, reserved only for China's most critical military and geopolitical discussions. There, seated in a semicircle, were 5 of China's top defense minds, along with Xi Jinping himself. The discussion that followed would change the course of the 21st century. The first item on the secret agenda was something that had never been proposed before: the new Silk Wing, a satellite-powered, AI-driven defense coordination network connecting 14 African nations with China's orbital satellite systems. The idea? To create an African continental shield, capable of early warning detection, airspace protection, cyber defense, and satellite imagery access, all independent of NATO or US surveillance systems. Traoré's reply stunned even Xi Jinping. "We have always had the people. We now have the spirit. What we lacked was the eye in the sky. Give us that, and Africa will rise not just from the soil, but into the stars." China agreed. In a bold move, Traoré offered what many African leaders have long feared to risk: a direct barter of Burkina Faso's gold reserves in exchange for full technological transfer, including drone manufacturing blueprints, missile defense systems, and AI lab infrastructure. She paused, then nodded. "It's time Africa stops being the mine and starts being the mind," Traoré declared. The two leaders signed a classified pact of reciprocal innovation, granting Burkina Faso the tools to launch Africa's first stealth drone program, manufactured entirely on African soil, with Chinese advisory but no ownership stake. The West was officially locked out. Traoré presented what would later be called the Traoré Doctrine, a multi-phase blueprint for creating a unified African security bloc, industrial alliance, and digital economy, anchored not on borrowed Western aid, but on shared resources, youth innovation, and uncompromising sovereignty. Phase 1. Establish the West African Strategic Air Command in Ouagadougou. Construct 4 military academies across Africa for homegrown officer training. Mandate economic loyalty clauses in all African mineral exports. No more free extraction, no more sweetheart deals. Phase 2. Launch a Pan-African digital currency, free from the CFA franc or dollar influence. Build a continental data infrastructure to end reliance on Western cloud systems. Create AfriLink, a secure communications platform for governments and militaries. Xi Jinping stood up and clapped. Africa is no longer waiting for the future. Under your watch, Mr. Traoré, Africa is the future. Midway through the closed-door session, a surprise encrypted call came in. On the line, Russian President Vladimir Putin. His message? Simple, cold, direct. The Western world fears him now. You, President Traoré, have awakened the ghosts of Lumumba, Sankara, and Nkrumah. But unlike them, you are not alone. The room fell into silence. Traoré simply responded, I will not die with dreams in my mouth. I will live to see Africa stand, and if I fall, it will be as a shield, not a shadow. Within 48 hours of Traoré's return to Burkina Faso, satellite images began circulating on encrypted military forums. The images showed 20 J-35A jets already being assembled at a secret base outside Ouagadougou. Intelligence agencies in Europe and the US were stunned. The Pentagon reportedly convened an emergency task force dubbed Red Falcon to assess potential shifts in global air dominance emerging from sub-Saharan Africa. CNN ran a headline, Has Africa just declared independence from the West? At the African Union headquarters in Addis Ababa, leaders began reaching out for direct briefings from Traoré's team. Senegal, Mali, Guinea, Uganda, and even South Africa requested urgent inclusion in the new Silk Wing. Traoré had become more than a president. He was now a continental axis. When Traoré's aircraft touched down in Ouagadougou, tens of thousands of citizens flooded the tarmac. Children held signs saying, Thank you for making us proud. Old women wept. Young men stood at attention. The military gave a 100-gun salute. Standing atop his convoy, Traoré raised his fist and said, I went with a mission. I return with a revolution. And this revolution is not just for Burkina Faso, it is for every forgotten African child. It is for every dusty village, every stolen resource, every silenced voice. Africa has spoken, and her echo will not fade. Construction began immediately on the Thomas Sankara Aerospace Defense Academy in northern Burkina Faso. Chinese engineers and African apprentices worked side by side. Within 3 weeks, drone prototypes were seen hovering over training grounds, silent, sleek, deadly, and painted with the African sun. Young Africans across the continent flooded online forums, calling Traoré the Falcon of the Sahel and Commander of the New Dawn. Western media launched smear campaigns, but they fell flat. The youth were no longer listening. They were building, dreaming, flying. With J-35 as in his hangars, digital currency plans underway, and a strategic alliance sealed with the East, Ibrahim Traoré has done what few dared to attempt: stand tall in a world of giants and command attention not through fear, but through fearless clarity. He is no longer just a soldier, no longer just a president. He is now the pulse of a continent ready to rise. And the world? It will either learn to listen to Africa or be forced to reckon with it.